I've got something ridiculous to tell you, and quite honestly, for some of you, it might make your blood boil. And since we're being ridiculous, let's just rip the band-aid off. So here it is. If you don't understand how stories work, you will never find success as a screenwriter. Period. So I need to be clear. I'm not going to talk about what story structure is. I have other videos about that, and I'll link one at the end of this one. Or you could read my book, which is linked below. But I'm going to give you 3 reasons to convince you why understanding stories will work dramatically to improving your screenwriting, and really improving any storytelling that you want to do. And I know you're like, Jake, narrative structure isn't sexy. I want to be writing my stories. I want to know how to write a flashback or a monologue or do an outline. Not spending time learning how stories work. It's not fun to study, all right? It's kind of like eating vegetables, and I get it, because I'm not a huge vegetable fan myself, but if you don't eat any vegetables, it's hard to be healthy. And if you don't know at least a little about narrative structure, which is just a fancy way of describing how stories actually work, your screenplays, novels, short stories, whatever, will not live up to their potential. And this gets at the first reason why narrative structure is critical, and in fact, magical. It ensures you are actually telling a story. This is the trap. You write 100, 120 pages, whatever it is, and you think you have a story. You have a full-length script, you have fade in, you have a bunch of stuff in the middle, and fade out. So of course it's a story, but that's just it. It isn't. You don't have the pieces that make up a story. You have characters, you have events that happen, hopefully those characters are involved, but you don't have a story. And what's worse is you don't even know that you don't have a story. And the reason you don't know is because you don't even know what you need to have to actually have a story. What are the pieces? What are the components? So yes, you need to know things like inciting incidents and midpoints and status quo and premises and wants and needs and life dreams and stuff like that. You gotta know. Because if you don't know, you get mired in the quicksand of story models, which is the second reason you need to know what narrative structure is. It helps you avoid formulaic storytelling. Now, I know some of you like to use the models of Save the Cat or Dan Harmon's Story Circle or The Hero's Journey or one of the others that are out there touting, all stories follow this model. No, they don't. The problem with story models is they blend elements of story along with elements of storytelling. And if you don't know how to recognize which is which, you end up following a formula, and your story starts to feel stale and unoriginal, because now all you're doing is copying and pasting. Now, let me put it in other terms. Basically what you're doing is you're doing a bad version of AI, because all AI can do is replicate what it already knows. It seems like it's making something new, but it isn't. And when you follow the story circle or Save the Cat or whatever, and I'm sorry to say this, but you aren't as efficient as AI. And so your scripts are like bad AI knockoffs. And a side note, this is why you see people post about how I tried using AI to write a script and it's actually good. No, it isn't. It's a knockoff. It's just better at hiding the fact that it's a knockoff, and you don't recognize it's a knockoff because you don't even know what narrative structure is to begin with. You see, where understanding narrative structure actually becomes magical is once you realize what pieces you need to make a story, you can now choose to tell it in a host of ways. And when you discover the best way to tell that particular story, it feels unique and fresh and lovely. And what's more, you actually have a story and not just a series of events with some interesting characters. But the third reason for why understanding narrative structure is critical is because at some point, someone's going to read your script and give you notes. Now, they may not fully understand narrative structure. They are reading as a reader or potential producer, something like that. They've heard phrases like inciting incident and premise and want, need, life dream, but they probably don't know what they are. But that's not their job to know. It's your job to know. And here's why you must know. If you understand narrative structure, you will be able to properly interpret the notes that you get. Someone says, I just didn't relate to the character, and you think you just need to go in and add them saving a cat or something. Nope, they just gave you a story note, but you're trying to fix the problem by using storytelling to address it. That's like taking your car into the shop when when I step on the brakes, the whole car shakes, and they tell you you need new tires. So you buy new tires, and then you step on the brakes and your car still shakes. Okay, the tires weren't the problem, and addressing notes works the same way. The people giving you notes do not have to know or understand narrative structure because it's not their job. It's your job to know. You have to know the difference. And there are only 3 ways to know. 1, you can have natural talent and just know how to write a story and tell a story because you're super gifted and talented, and this is less than 1% of writers, so probably not you. Okay, it's not me either. 2, you can take the long road and write and write and write and write and read screenplays and read more screenplays, which is the advice you get from a lot of people, and yes, you will eventually get there. So start the 10 to 15 year clock ticking if you're on this path. May you be steadfast and persevere through the difficult times ahead. Or 3, you can actually study narrative structure and learn it. And when you do, all of a sudden stories just make sense to you. You'll know how to craft them. You'll be able to avoid the formulas, and you'll know how to interpret and apply notes that you get. But if you don't want to access the magic of narrative structure by doing some focused, intentional study, and you just want to learn it on your own, I'm not going to lie to you, you can totally do that. Just know it's going to take you a long, long time. Or you can be intentional and study narrative structure. Now, I'm sure you know someone who loves to work on computers or cars or mechanical things, and you know something that all of them have in common? They started out by taking those things apart and rebuilding them. They didn't start off trying to build a brand new computer right out of the gate or put together a brand new engine in a car. Okay, they'd dismantle a computer and rebuild it. They'd break down an engine and rebuild it. And after a while, they'd start incorporating new parts or new things into their builds. And then, after they learned on one computer or one car or whatever, they could take apart most any computer or most any car because they learned how it worked. They learned what they needed and what they didn't. They learned how to make the parts fit together. They learned what you can even move around. These parts can go over here or over here, it doesn't matter. They learned what parts were essential and which weren't. And that's what you need to do with narrative structure. Open up the hood on not just a screenplay or 2, but on story itself. And if you learn what a story is, well, now you have the magic skeleton key, and you'll be able to start telling all kinds of stories. Over the past couple of months, I've done quite a few consultations on screenplays, and almost always there is a story issue. And we spend time talking through that because in my consultations, I don't give you a written report. We actually have a discussion about your script where you can ask questions. We work through the issue. My hope is that you will all set aside some time, devoted time, to learn about narrative structure. So when you do try to get that script consultation, when you do, try to write something, when you're employed in writing a screenplay, it becomes magical and it will become marvelous. And if you want the magic key to unlocking the potential of your screenplay, your next move should be to learn and understand narrative structure. Put that at the top of your list. If you want to watch a couple videos and get your feet wet on narrative structure and film, watch this. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit all the buttons, which really helps me out. And there are links below if you'd like my help with other things. And when you tell a story, actually tell a story and tell a story that matters. See you later.